most people will use a stablecoin instead of Bitcoin because most people are still in a perceived reality where inflation is normal, and the stablecoin gives them more value than their currency. But a stablecoin is a guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin, and it's part of a construct that is still an inflationary monetary system. So that guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin, that system has to, not might, that system has to attack Bitcoin. These are opposites. It has to attack Bitcoin at some point. An inflationary monetary system cannot coexist with a deflationary one. And the problem is there's a lot of people that think it can. They're bolting on two different thoughts that are opposites.
Change is never smooth, especially when it threatens the foundations of power. Jeff Booth frames Bitcoin not as a simple technology shift but as a battle against human nature itself. Moving from the centralized system we've always known to something decentralized and secure won't be neat. It will be messy, painful, and marked by resistance at every level. If you were in charge of a system that controls money, Booth asks, and something emerged that could strip that control away, what would you do? History suggests the answer is clear. You'd fight it with everything you had. Governments and powerful institutions operate behind the curtain, and individuals often sell out for financial gain. That means Bitcoin won't grow in a vacuum. Its rise will be met with confusion, disinformation, and direct attempts to stop it. The clash is already visible in stablecoins. For many people who are used to inflation, a stablecoin feels like safety. Yet Booth calls it a guaranteed loss coin when compared to Bitcoin because it's still chained to the inflationary system. And two systems, one designed to inflate forever, the other inherently deflationary, cannot coexist peacefully. Eventually, the old system has to attack the new. Booth warns that the danger may come from within. If enough Bitcoin activity is funneled through centralized platforms, authorities could strike at the heart of the network while most users remain unaware. That's why he stresses, the path forward isn't clean, but the struggle is inevitable. If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that actually understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
We're talking about change. We're talking about building this thing and making sure it stays decentralized and secure against human nature. And it's going to be messy all the way through. To get from one system that we've always lived in to a different system that describes a totally different reality is just going to be painful and messy, and there's going to be a million fights along the way. And the fights are many of those fights. If you think about what would you do, take the other side. What would you do if most people didn't know this? They were living in this perceived reality, and you needed to stop Bitcoin because if it didn't stop, it would take all of the power and distribute it to the people who should have had it in the first place. What would you do? You would do anything. And that anything, if you think about three-letter word agencies throughout time and what they do that you might not know, and how many people will sell themselves for money, then we should expect a lot of things coming against Bitcoin and most people being confused about what that really meant, right? So it has to look like this. You don't have to bite. You have your own choice to what that looks like. You can go as deep as you want. You can go as deep as understand your agency, see these fights, see what side of this you're on, and you can choose what Bitcoin is to you. And I think that's important. When you talk about where does the money come from, the free market is extraordinarily hard to build value. Why it gets co-opted all the time is because it's easier to rent seek, right? The free market, the only way you win more of the pie is by delivering immense value to somebody else, so everyone else wins. So where does the money come from for the grants? Where does the money come from all of this? It comes from people who have made money in the opposite system.
Yeah.
Right?
Either by likely by rent seeking,
right? Yeah. Likely by rent seeking, or being really successful at a thing that lives on top of rent seeking. That doesn't make them bad or anything else, but it does produce a risk factor of that whole thing. If all of the money is coming from there, and everybody believes and you had to stop this because it changed that. Most people will use a stablecoin instead of Bitcoin because most people are still in a perceived reality where inflation is normal, and the stablecoin gives them more value than their currency. But a stablecoin is a guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin, And it's part of a construct that is still an inflationary monetary system. So that guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin, that system has to, not might, that system has to attack Bitcoin. These are opposites. It has to attack Bitcoin at some point. Now, it might not do that for some time, but how would it do it? If you had enough transactions just inside this, let's say it was Coinbase, while it was Satoshi, let's say you aggregated enough those and all the transactions were there, you would probably launch the attack sometime then where people didn't know this, right? Didn't know the risk and everything else from that. But an inflationary system, monetary system cannot coexist with a deflationary one. And the problem is there's a lot of people that think it can. They're bolting on two different thoughts that are opposites. The debt is already insolvent. The debt is lent into existence. It can't allow deflation. So it can't allow, instead of saying it can't allow deflation, insert this, it can't allow the free market.
Jeff Booth argues that no single group can dictate the direction of Bitcoin. The more anyone tries to enforce one path, the more the community pushes back to protect decentralization. That pushback isn't just stubbornness, it's survival. The risks of centralization are simply too great. For Booth, everything hinges on this point. If Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, everything else will take care of itself. If it doesn't, then nothing else matters. That's why, for him, this conversation is bigger than money. It's about freedom and about ensuring that the system remains resistant to capture. He acknowledges that the debates within Bitcoin can look chaotic. Core developers take on incredibly hard work, and every proposed change comes with layers of complexity and risk. That doesn't make them enemies in his view. Instead, it highlights the difficulty of protecting a decentralized system while it grows. Still, Booth is clear about his own alignment. He leans toward knots because he sees it as keeping Bitcoin healthier, more resilient, and less prone to creeping centralization. To him, the real threat isn't disagreement within the community, it's the possibility that Bitcoin drifts toward a system where too much power concentrates in too few hands. That's the line that must never be crossed. Let's get back to the interview.
So Bitcoin mechanic is friend, and I think that I haven't weighed into this discussion very much, so I will now. I have been running knots. I haven't. I won't upgrade to the new version. I have been running core. I won't upgrade, and I'm going to run knots. And so I think they're on the right side of this. But it's also I'm not as vitriol against core and everything else as many people are. I think it would be easy to make a whole bunch of mistakes. To trust 20, 30, 80 people to know everything we're talking about Bitcoin would be ludicrous. In fact, a lot of the threat model to Bitcoin used to be, what if core was compromised? And if you just ran what would naturally happen from a centralized system that was getting stronger and stronger through our actions, you'd expect core to get compromised at some point. And I've always said, well, it doesn't matter, because you would just split it off because it can't be stopped. And so what Luke and Bitcoin Mechanic and others had really just showed is they made Bitcoin stronger and more and ossified more by providing choice. Like when core came in with heavy-handed, here's the way we're doing it, another thing was created and the market spoke. Yeah. And that's why I think we're at 16.6% knots today and growing. So it's telling you something. It's telling you that this can't be, no one can say this is what you have to do. The more you do that, this is what you have to do, the more you're going to drive people to make sure this is decentralized and secure, because those risks are too great. So what I would say is, there's too many people who care. There's too many people who care about this, who are not going to bury their head in the sand and say, I'm going to accept those risks. No. What you're seeing is that active participation, fighting for the thing that's really critical. And you see other people who don't think it's as critical. And their view of reality, well, they could have that view of reality. And that is when you say the monetary maximalists, right? That I'm a monetary maximalist. Because if this stays decentralized and secure, nothing of the other things matter, right? This frees humanity. If it gets broken, it doesn't. And so I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for something very, very different. And that you'll see in Bitcoin very different takes on that same subject, which would be normal as you're going through this chaotic change. And this doesn't mean that I'm against a bunch of the core people too, because they're trying their best under a whole bit. Like every time you try to change something, that would be a hard job, right? It would be, I'm on the side of knots in this.
Struggles that reshape entire systems rarely look orderly, and Bitcoin is no exception. Its survival depends on more than price charts or hype. It rests on whether a decentralized network can resist both external pressure and the slow creep of internal compromise. Every clash, every fork, every argument over governance is really a test of whether its foundation holds firm or fractures under weight. The irony is that the louder the push to bend it into something controllable, the stronger the need becomes to defend its open nature. What matters most is not the noise of disagreement, but whether the core principle of dispersion of power remains intact. The pressing concern is whether Bitcoin can remain true to its origins while navigating constant attempts to bend it into the mold of the very system it was built to outlast. So stay tuned. If you're into real, data-backed takes on the financial system, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the weekly updates. Thank you for the support, and I hope you enjoy the video.